In this next article from the Daily Caller, report, public school instructs third graders to deconstruct their racial and sexual identities to understand power and privilege. Obviously, I've done a whole bunch of crazy drugs and I've gone crazy because we have gone down the shit chute into crazy land. I can't actually be saying this stuff. I must have gone crazy because this stuff is insane. A public elementary school in California, or as I like to call it, Crapifornia, reportedly instructed their third grade students to deconstruct their racial and sexual identities to understand power and privilege. Discovery Institute scholar Christopher Rufo reported, I hate how they paraphrase the title. Like, come on, man. You really got to paraphrase the title. R.I. Mayor Holtz Elementary School, part of the Cupertino Union School District in San Jose, California, reportedly held a session on, quote, social identities, unquote, during a math class for third grade students where the teachers asked students to list their race, class, gender, religion, and family structure in an, quote, identity map, end quote. Rufo reported based off documents he obtained. So what about the adopted kids? Did they had to put in, I'm adopted, in tell everybody like my life compared to yours is nowhere near as good, although that's not true for all of them, but much compassion to those adopted kids. That, though, is not oppression. That's not oppression. No. Only white people are capable of oppressing people because they're the dominant class of people, and they oppress the oppressed class of people because they have their white privilege and their white power dominant structure that dominated the world with their advanced modern technology. And no minorities in the entire history of the world have ever oppressed anyone. Not a single poor person in the entire world has ever held another poor person down. No. It's only the dominant class of people that oppresses the oppressed class of people because they're insane. Scoop with a big old capital bold S at the beginning, a Cupertino elementary school forces third graders. Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. We already read that. A Twitter teacher reportedly began the lesson with a slide entitled, quote, dominant culture, end quote, which includes, quote, white, middle class, cisgender, educated, able-bodied, Christian, end quote, individuals who, quote, hold power and stay in power, end quote. Okay, so it's racist if you hold power, right? So let's say you got the power because you were a high quality person, you tried really hard, you didn't spend your life getting in crime, doing drugs, drinking, partying, having sex. Instead, you did everything right. And then so you got some power. And then if you don't give this up, if you don't give up all of your the extra money that you had to give equity to everyone, now you're a racist. Here's a tweet from Christopher F. Rufo. It's first, with a big old capital F at the beginning, the teacher told the 8th and 9-year-old students that they lived in a, quote, dominant culture, end quote, of, quote, white, middle class, cisgender, educated, able-bodied Christians who created and maintained the, quote, culture in order to, quote, why did they do this? This is such crap, journal. Boo. The teacher then reportedly read the students from, quote, this book is anti-racist, end quote. What they need to say is this book is anti-white racist because it's all about targeting white people. Apparently, there's black people can't discriminate against white people because only the oppressed the dominant class of people is able to oppress the oppressed class of people. It can't be such a thing that the oppressed class of people oppresses themselves and holds themselves down. No, 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 no. No. In order to make their delusional rhetoric work, you have to have a white male with white privilege who's in the dominant class because he's got money and they need to take the money to get equity because they're communists. So the this book is Anti-White Racist by Tiffany Jewell, explaining, quote, intersectionality, end quote, where the cray meets exponential cray. One of the examples this book gives is that, quote, heterosexuality considered handsome speaks to English as more privileged than black transgender woman, end quote. Excuse me, I just vomited. Okay, so let me explain to you the reality of the way the world works. So when people pay you money at the workplace, they're not necessarily supposed to be paying you money so that you can get rich and that the parents will slave to raise you up so that you can be a bliss ninny. Okay? The way the real world works is our parents spend on average about $1 million or more raising each child. So somebody put almost $1 million or more into in order so that they could get the revenue back in the form of tax monies and passing it on to the next generation. So gay people, trans people, they can't have kids. If you had an island full of gay people and another island full of lesbians or a trans people, and you came back in 100 years, all of them would be dead. They would all be dead. You can't even live without the heterosexual people. So does that mean that the heterosexual people should have to pay extra money for the kids so that the gay and the trans people and the people who aren't having kids, like the feminists who put off having kids until their 30s so that they could rise up the corporate ladder so they can get more money, so they could slave for a corporation until they're too old to have kids and their family line dies off. This group of people needs to cover, they have to spend $1 million per kid. They need to have 2 kids on average. So they need to come up with $2 million more than the gay and the trans and the feminist people. But then these people are not having kids. So what do? They go to the workplace and then they work until they get enough money that they don't have to work, right? Because that's the way people work, right? People, if they don't actually have to work, why on earth would they go slave for some corporation to make somebody else rich if they didn't have to? They don't have kids to pay for. They don't have to pay $1 million per kid. They don't have 3 or 4 kids. They just took the money and pocketed it and ran. $4 million. Even one kid, $1 million, taking that money in the pocket and then bouncing, right? So obviously, if you paid them an equal amount of money to the parents are going to be used as slaves. We're used as a piggy bank for these people that they want to attack our privilege, saying that we're part of this heterosexual group of dominant people that's dominating the world because they're making so much extra money. Why are they making more money? Why are these parents working so hard that they're making all this extra money and being the dominant class of people? Why is it that most affluent people come from 2-parent households, heteronormative families, with a father at the top of the household? Why? Because women don't have to work as hard as men. Because parents have to work harder than everyone else. I don't have the option of just making the bare minimum because I have a child that I have to spend over $1 million to raise so that he can have the same quality life as me. I'm working this hard because I have to. The same as all the other heteronormative parents and the single parents. And they're like, oh, no, you got to pay women equally. You got to pay them equally because if you don't, it's not fair. It's like, okay, well, is the woman who's getting all this money, is she going to date somebody with less money than her? The same amount or more? She's going to look for a dude who has as much or more money than her. And so what does that mean? She doesn't need to work. It means that she literally doesn't have a reason to actually work. This is why they're making more money. This is why you don't have to pay women equally, because women in the United States, they have literally 2/3 of the money in the United States. 2/3 of the money in the United States is under the control of the women. They say they're underpaid, right? Oh, we're only making 80 cents on the dollar for every dollar a man works. Or makes working, right? So apparently the amount of money that you get paid per hour is the same thing as how much money you have, right? No, dude. You live in a delusional fantasy world. No, all of this was just a false narrative that was constructed by privileged white women who were complaining that they didn't have enough money, and single moms that thought it was so oppressive to be in a marriage with having a wealthy husband who and being able to go and spend the money without having to work. You get all your free time, and then they think it's like, why on earth is the woman even working? Why? Why do women want equal pay? So they don't have to work as hard. They're not doing it so that they have to work harder and longer hours so they can be away from their family. That's absolutely not why women want equal pay at all, dude. They want equal pay because they're saying it's oppressive to be a single mom. They're saying, I'm having to front all of these bills because I'm a single mom. Okay. That's a good reason to pay the woman more money, right? And how many hours are these single moms working compared to the women who were feminists, rose up the corporate ladder, found a richer dude, and then in their 30s they were more interested in a family. Like, how many hours are these single moms working? Are they working more or less? They're working more hours, right? And so that's why they want more money, because they have to put in more time, and they're taking the money and they're giving it to somebody else, right? Right. What does that have anything to do with feminism? This is like basically taking care of kids. You're not giving equal pay to the woman. You're giving some money to the kid. But what's going to happen to the kid growing up with a single mom? Kids who come from single parent households ran by females, 80% of them are run by females. They have a 20x increased chance of going to prison. They have a 9.5x increased chance of drug abuse. Their poverty, I can't remember the poverty rate. Their poverty rate's sky high. And that's because in order to actually compete with the children from the heteronormative families, you're going to have to invest time into your child. You can't have two parents working full time, getting high pay, big money, and then have the kid just learn it himself. That's not why the people from the heteronormative families are doing so well. They're doing so well because usually mom, she probably went to college, might have went to college. Nowadays, chances are she went to college. She got an education and she's able to spend time because her husband's working. She doesn't need to work as hard. She wants to be with her family. That's why she's working so hard. So she then puts time into teaching her kids, and then her kids do better in school, and they rise up the social hierarchy, and that's why they're dominant, is because it's a better system. It's because there is more strength in the system. The kids come out better. They're much more well-behaved. And I've seen this personally through what my son has ADHD. He's had a nightmarish problem in school because he got kidnapped by his crazy radical feminist grandma for years. Caused a lot of problems, dude. Destroyed my life. And my son has problems sitting down in class. He just gets up and just walks off. He's like disrespecting the teacher. He's a smart kid, but he'll get behind because he doesn't have all his stuff in the beginning. He doesn't have his all his school supplies where he's not organized good enough, and he'll get behind because he thought, initially it was so easy for him because he's a smart kid, and then whenever it got to the point where you had to do the hard work, he didn't have the work ethic, and he started spacing out, and then he started disrupting the class, making weird noise, rolling around on the floor, being the troublemaker class clown, and then it's because he's got ADHD. It's because he can't sit down. It's because he's got bad manners. It's because he lacks discipline. And so I've watched, my mother has been helping him with homeschool because honestly, she's kind of on the same intellectual level as him. He's 12 years old. I've always thought my mom was very bright. But now that I've seen her helping with homeschool, I understand exactly why. Because she grew up in the 50s and, well, she needs to go back to school. And so from her helping my son, I've seen that she's sat there with them and she's helped correct the behavioral deficiencies. She figured it out with them. And, the school's much tougher than it was when she was a kid. When she was a kid, like it was a walk in the park. Now, it's Common Core, like it's actually difficult schoolwork the whole way up now. Like it should be. But the reason why my son is not at danger of failure anymore and going into the prison system is because a woman took her time that she wasn't paid. She wasn't paid to do that. She did it out of the kindness of her heart. And she invested time into her family. And that investment greatly paid off. And also, too, probably reduced a lot of medical bills that the state has been having to pay for. So we benefited because it's more of an efficient system to have two parents where you can have a division of labor. And it's more of an efficient system when you have conventions. So there's this thing in physics called the right-hand rule. Have you ever heard it? Electromagnetism. You put your thumb towards the direction of the magnetic field or north, and then you curve it around, and then this is the direction of the magnetic field, right? The right-hand rule. It also works with vectors. It's called a convention. So the convention is that the men will go open the door for the women. And this saves us time because the man will just go out right out in front. It's like, here you go, ladies. So is this sexism? Is this like bad to open the door for ladies? No, it's quicker for us to do it that way because it's a convention. So a lot of these things they're trying to attribute it to malice. They're trying to attribute to bad intentions, to white privilege and white supremacy and the sins of our ancestors that we're responsible for, when in reality, it has a very good explanation. In reality, the explanation actually was not hateful at all, but they made it sound like these people are demon. They make it sound like heteronormative is a bad word because they're the dominant class of people and they oppress the oppressed class of people because they're heteronormative. Right. Or maybe it's that if you're the kids who are not from the heteronormative household are not competitive. No, it couldn't it all be the deficiencies in you? It's always somebody else's fault because you're innocent. You didn't do anything. It didn't matter that you didn't try hard enough, or that you mouthed off to the teacher, or that you did drugs and went out and partied instead of studying for the test, hanging out with the nerds, programming computers, and starting a startup. No. It's the white man that forced you to not program computers, forced you to not get into science, technology, engineering, math, entrepreneurship, design, and education. No, it's the dominant class of people that's oppressing the oppressed class of people, because the reason why they're oppressed is because they were dominated by the dominant class of people, right? Or maybe it's because there's a better way of doing things and you're not competitive to that better way of doing things, and you should feel lucky that there is a better way of doing things. Here in our last story for the night, and this is bullet 52. Should have been 53, but let's just say it's 53. This has been about 9 hours up here. I'm pushing 10 hours. I'm a soldier of Ja Army, baby. So going into this last story from Breitbart, BBC diversity exec : white privilege is fact. White people, quote, never will be discriminated against, end quote, for race. It's not possible. Couldn't possibly be. Sarpong, the London-born daughter of Ghanaian migrants, told the Telegraph that, quote, there's unfairness baked into our system, end quote, in an interview on her role, the publicly funded broadcaster director of creative diversity, i.e. the token black person. Quote, I don't for a single second say that all white people are privileged. Of course not. But there are just benefits even if you do come from low income and you're white. Because apparently there's no benefits to being an African American. Apparently everything about it is non-beneficial. There's no connections. It's not true that being in a minority allows you to make friends easier, because when you're in the majority, everybody looks like you, so you're just not as big of a deal. But if you're in the minority, it's like a hippie finding another hippie at a party where there's no hippies, or a techno raver going to a work party where he thinks everybody's square and they meet up with another techno raver. No, right? No. That could never happen. It could never happen that there's any benefits of being in the minority, right? Because the white man has been oppressing all the oppressed people because they're the dominant class of people. And that means that they have bad intentions and that they don't want to share their stuff because they're racist. If they weren't racist, they would give up their white privilege. They would take all their money and they would split it up equally and give everyone equal equity. And then all of a sudden we could all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And then we could all become cisgender polyqueers and we could circle jerk each other in the safe space. Like, Kumbaya, my lord, Kumbaya. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Kumbaya, my lord, Kumbaya. Kumbaya, more like it. Woo! Woo! Chill out my white privilege, bro. You're never judged on your race, end quote, she claimed, adding, quote, you may be discriminated against because of class, you may be discriminated against because of your age, you may be discriminated against because of your gender, your size, but you will never be discriminated against because of your race. And that's in itself is the concept of white privilege. Right, like I've never been discriminated against in my entire life. Obviously, you don't know me. Obviously. Definitely not part of the dominant class of people. Definitely not oppressing anyone. I'm definitely at the bottom of the social hierarchy, getting shit on by anti-racists in Eugene, Oregon, because I do not believe that African Americans are victims and that they're entirely innocent. No, I believe that you have a hand in your destiny. Your fate is not dictated by some white man up top the ivory tower. We live in a real world where power is distributed. We live in a world where African Americans dominate the pop culture. We do. African Americans and hip hop culture has dominated United States pop culture for decades. They're like, oh, but only 5% of, hold on, I can't remember. But there's only about half of the amount of African Americans who are millionaires compared to white people. So that means it must be white supremacy, right? No. The average age of a white person is 56. The average age of a minority in the United States is 23. How much money do you think a white person is going to be making at the age of 23 compared to how much money a white person or a black person is going to be making at the age of 56? Do you think they're going to make the same amount? Do you think maybe the young person's going to make double what the old person's making? Or do you think maybe the old person might be making double what the young person might be making because they're older, they have more skills, and they've had a lot of time to save up money? Right, because obviously the latter is true. Obviously, a 24-year-old person would be expected to make about $24.7K per year because that's just the average income of people that age. But they say that's racism. It couldn't actually possibly be that there's actually a real explanation that's not racist, because white people have bad intentions because they were responsible for slavery, right? Like it was white people that invented slavery back when people only lived in Africa, right? Back before white people existed, all of the slaves on earth were enslaved by white people, right? Obviously, that is not true. Obviously, slavery came from Africa. Obviously, the story of the Exodus in the Bible, obviously it was Africans who enslaved the founders of the Judeo-Christian religions, right? So it was the white people's ancestors who were enslaved, right? Do you think that the original white people who would have been a minority whenever they first evolved, obviously this group of people would have been very small compared to the other group of people because they had just evolved. And because of that, they would have been the minority, right? It would have been them targeted for slaves. During the transatlantic slave period of time, there were approximately 1 million white European slaves in Africa. The rate of slave ownership in Africa was higher than it was in America because Africans have owned slaves since the dawn of humanity. This isn't a new thing. White people did not invent it. They purchased West African slaves. Not all Africans were brought to America in the transatlantic slave trade. It's not true. In fact, most of them ended up in South America. The reality is that white people freed the slaves because they thought it was immoral. The reality is that Germany was a landlocked country, so was Russia, and they didn't participate in the transatlantic slave trade. They didn't. Germans in America were the primary force responsible for abolition because they never owned slaves, because they weren't part of the transatlantic slave trade, because Germany's a landlocked country. But you don't know any of this, do you? This is like brand new. You're like, wow, where are you getting all this stuff from? Studying World War II history, studying the history of slavery. You'll see that obviously there's a lot of bad people mixed up in this history, and they're not all white. And not all slave owners in America were white either. In fact, freed slaves actually were some of the loudest anti-abolitionist voices. The freed slaves loved owning slaves. Africans loved owning slaves. They even had white slaves. The other group of people who owned slaves were the American Indians. So they say, oh no, the American Indians were just completely innocent, right? Like they didn't do anything wrong. They never invaded another tribe of people, mass slaughtered everyone and took slaves, right? Never happened. No. They're the oppressed class of people. They never attacked any of the white people. They never instigated any of the conflicts that caused them to lose the war. Never. Not a single one. Obviously, that's not true. Obviously, both sides had responsibility. Obviously, you can't steal land from a nomad. It's not possible. The nomad leaves the land, and then the land is then up for grabs because they're called nomads for a reason. They don't have a government. It's not possible to illegally immigrate to a place that doesn't have a government. It's not possible. We legally immigrated here. The American Indians died from smallpox. Before, most of them never even met a white man in their life. We came here and it was wide open territory. And the American Indians said at first, welcome. And then we started having wars with each other like every other culture of people all throughout time has always had. There's always been a victor. There's always been two groups of people battling out, one of them losing, and their people die off. It's always been that way. But they'll have you believe all of the world's problems are from white people. It couldn't possibly be that people used to not have the internet. They didn't have modern medicine. They didn't know that the earth revolved around the sun or that there could possibly be extraterrestrial life. They thought that gods created the heavens and that the stars were like God poked a whole bunch of holes in a globe and there's a bunch of light on the other side. It's shining through, and that's what the constellations are, right? It's insane. It's crazy. None of it makes any sort of sense. The reality is, white people invented the modern world. This brought people out of poverty, and then we didn't need slaves, right? If the white man had never invented the cotton gin, there'd still be black people picking slaves with white people. But we invented tools. Why? Because they were part of the dominant class of people, and it allowed them to not have to focus on being a primitive, and it allowed them to invent technology that brought us out of poverty. So they're cheap on saying, oh, these people are bad because they're white privilege and they money. So we got to take it. We got to take all their money and we got to split it up, give everybody equal equity. Because somehow communism is going to save the world. Like we haven't tried this one before. It has never failed before. Nope. The reason why all those people died in the gulags in the USSR and in communist China? No, that was white supremacy. No, that was the Christians. That was the racist Christians that mass slaughtered all the people in the gulags in atheist USSR. Right. Yeah, right. It's the white Christian males that are responsible for the cultural de-evolution in China, where the Chinese people started mass slaughtering the Chinese people to kill off the capitalist. Could never, ever in a million years be that the people were dirt poor, that their living conditions were horrible, and it caused them to want to die. And then that's why they committed all the atrocities. No. It all has to be the big, bad, white supremacist conservative. The one that's oppressing them minorities because he doesn't believe that they're oppressed. Somehow, it's oppressive to believe that you have a hand in your own fate and that you can actually change your fate and get what you want out of life. I guess if you're a beta male, it's pretty oppressive, huh? Everything's going to be oppressive, right? That's it for this episode of RSS Commentary, issue 117. Started out on Friday, January 15th. We had about 3 some odd hours. Yesterday, we were hitting 6 hours, 54 minutes. So we are at a 10-hour live stream today. So give it up for OBS for not crashing. Woo! And thank you very much for watching. I appreciate every single click, every single flame, every single comment, every single criticism. If you find any factual errors, you can report them on GitHub at github.com/RSS commentary /Cale McCullough /issues /117 for this show. I know that's a mouthful. GitHub.com/RSS commentary /Cale McCullough /issues /117 /. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and farewell, peace, farewell, aloha, sayonara, peace be with you, and Godspeed in your journeys, friend. And I'm going to end the live stream because last night I ended the live stream and I thought that I clicked stop streaming, but I didn't. And then I just like ripped a mean fart on it. Oops.